Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in and exploring a very specific and frankly a somewhat uncomfortable corner of communication strategy.
Hmm.
We're moving beyond the typical self-help advice, stop crossing your arms, mirror your client, and we're diving straight into the intentional active use of nonverbal communication.
Right.
We're not just talking about reading signals, we're talking about actively sending false ones.
That's exactly right. Our source material today basically takes everything you thought you knew about nonverbal cues and just flips the script.
Okay.
This deep dive is really for you, the learner, who knows that in any high-stakes interaction, the rules of the game are often bent, maybe even broken.
Yeah.
The sources really explore this tension, this line between genuine influence and deliberate manipulation. They even label these strategies as the dark side of body language in negotiation.
So the mission is pretty clear then. We need to unpack how controlling your body language becomes this powerful, deliberate, strategic weapon.
A weapon, yeah.
And if you're preparing for a major negotiation, a huge contract signing, any situation where the outcome really, really matters, the question you have to ask is, are you prepared to identify or, well, deploy nonverbal deception?
That's the question.
Let's jump in.
Okay, let's start with the foundational premise, because the sources are, well, they're adamant about this. A negotiation is a dual-track event.
Dual track.
Yeah, it's not just about the words spoken or the data points you exchange. The sources state that it's, and I'm quoting here, just as important to read your opponent's body language.
So it's like a simultaneous silent negotiation happening right under the surface of the spoken one.
That's the perfect way to describe it.
That clarifies the intention immediately. I mean, we often treat nonverbal cues as just supplements, a way to confirm or contradict what's being said.
Right, as a backup.
But if it's just as important, then controlling that stream of information is, well, it's paramount. That shifts our focus completely from just passively observing
Reading to hell, yeah?
to active control.
Yeah, precisely. We are now moving into the territory of strategic misdirection. If you consciously deploy these techniques, your body language transforms. It goes from a passive indicator into what the sources call a powerful weapon of manipulation.
A weapon used specifically to mislead.
Exactly. We aren't just hiding discomfort anymore, we are broadcasting fabricated emotional states.
Okay, so let's unpack the first of these big psychological plays that the source material identifies. This one aims to disarm the opponent by creating what the analysis calls false vulnerability.
This is a really sophisticated maneuver. It weaponizes perceived weakness.
How so?
Well, the goal is to feign emotional or psychological distress when internally you're absolutely calm, you're prepared. The sources detail how you can pretend to be nervous when everything's fine.
That sounds incredibly risky. I mean, if you're perceived as weak, won't they just shut down all concessions?
It can be, but what about the specific physical tells you'd use? You can't just, say, I'm nervous, it's got to be sold.
Well-
It requires a bit of theater, but controlled theater. The tactics are subtle.
Like what?
Like shallow, slightly faster breathing, which mimics the body's natural stress response. You might introduce small, controlled movements, a slight tremor in your hand when you reach for a glass.
I see.
Or maybe your eyes dart quickly between the opponent's face and your notes, suggesting you're not focused, that there's high internal turbulence. The key is a kind of inconsistency.
So, smooth speaking, but then a slight purposeful stutter or a pause.
Exactly.
And what's the strategic advantage here? What do you gain by deploying this false vulnerability?
It's all about making the opponent believe they hold a massive, maybe even a decisive advantage.
Even fragile.
You look fragile, perhaps desperate for the deal, and this often leads them to become overconfident or critically aggressive.
Yeah.
When people feel like they have the upper hand, they tend to relax their strategic discipline. They might overplay their hand, and sometimes they reveal their true constraints or their bottom line way too early.
Because they think they're about to land the knockout blow.
They do. So by faking these high personal stakes, you trigger their predatory instinct, and their confidence becomes their own undoing. They think they've won the psychological battle, but they've just made a huge tactical error.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's look at the complete inverse of that strategy, which seems, I don't know, maybe even harder to sustain. Concealing true intent by faking calm.
Tactic 2, yes.
I find this one so compelling because it's not about projecting an emotion. It's about projecting a void, right?
Yeah.
A total lack of emotional feedback.
That's it.
The goal is using this outward relaxation to hide a really strong, unwavering intent, or maybe even aggressive deadlines.
Yeah.
The source describes it as looking completely relaxed while secretly holding your cards close.
And the execution here all relies on denying the opponent any signal of urgency, any signal of commitment.
Okay.
We're talking about an almost unnaturally slow blink rate, a posture that's just steady and unhurried, maybe leaning back slightly, palms flat on the table.
Kind of indicating ownership over the space and time.
Yes, you're projecting infinite patience.
In a high-pressure negotiation, that level of outward patience must be terrifying to the other side.
It can be.
They're running on adrenaline and deadlines, and you look like you're just waiting for a delayed flight.
It fundamentally distorts their perception of time and the resource allocation. If your physical presence just radiates patience, they start to assume you have unlimited alternatives or no hard deadline or endless capital.
So they can't accurately gauge your resources or your true breaking point.
Which is the most critical piece of intelligence in any negotiation. It just denies them the ability to apply any kind of calibrated pressure.
In other words, if they can't see the finish line, they don't know how fast to run. That is powerful information control.
It creates a static front.
Okay.
It forces the opponent to reveal more of their own position just to get some kind of reaction out of you.
Okay.
Now, let's transition from masking urgency to masking desire, which brings us to manipulation tactic 3, manufacturing disinterest.
This one addresses value signaling, and it's a classic move. You see it in sales, leveraged for negotiation, acting indifferent to an offer you really want.
Yeah.
Internally, you might be ecstatic that they've finally met your number, but you're absolutely not going to show it.
That is the critical component. You
Right.
have to suppress that instinctual positive response.
Because if they see joy, a quick smile, a micro expression of relief, they immediately know they left money on the table.
Immediately. So to manufacture disinterest, you have to control the delayed response. They make the offer, and you op. You take a moment, a beat too long before you react.
What are the best physical ways to express that kind of manufactured disinterest?
It's often about subtle dismissal. A very slow, slight head shake that looks more like you're considering it than rejecting it.
Okay.
Maybe a slight furrowing of the brow, suggesting complexity or ambiguity, even if the offer is exactly what you wanted.
Right.
And crucially, the sources emphasize the power of the almost imperceptible shrug, delivered as if to say, this is merely acceptable, not exciting.
And what's the tangible negotiation leverage gain from that? From treating a great offer as just acceptable?
It maintains your leverage for what comes next. If the opponent believes the offer holds little exceptional value for you, two crucial things happen.
Okay.
First, they're less likely to risk withdrawing it later if the negotiation hits a snag because they don't see your deep commitment to it.
I see.
And second, more importantly, they are less likely to attach restrictive conditions or increase the price on final details. They assume the value ceiling has already been reached.
So you've devalued your own interest to secure a better strategic outcome.
You have.
It makes perfect sense. You're manipulating their perception of scarcity. If they think you can walk away easily, they're less likely to pull strings on the deal. Okay, let's move on to tactic 4, which the sources suggest is maybe the most advanced, the most psychologically complex. The control play.
Achieved by faking worry, yes.
This is truly next-level stuff because it requires a deliberate sacrifice of your perceived status. This is the move where you intentionally seem worried just to make the other person feel in control.
Right.
Wow, that seems so counterintuitive to power dynamics. Why would I actively project concern or worry if my goal is to maintain authority? What's the mechanism there?
The mechanism is distraction and comfort. If the opponent perceives you as slightly worried, maybe about a technical detail or a potential snag in the procedure.
Or even just appearing slightly deferential.
Exactly. They relax their guard, they stop focusing on their own vulnerabilities, and they start focusing on comforting you or just enjoying the perceived authority that you've just handed them.
So they feel safe. They feel like they're in the driver's seat.
They are comfortable, talking freely, confident in their authority, believing they're dictating the terms.
And that's exactly when they are most susceptible to strategic maneuvering.
Precisely. They mistake comfort for control. By appearing slightly worried or less confident, you create a psychological vacuum that they rush to fill with their own ideas, often volunteering information or making minor concessions just to reinforce their own sense of dominance.
It keeps their attention fixed on their own narrative.
It does. And this leads us back to that crucial insight from the sources about this tactic. While the opponent feels they're the one in charge, the manipulator is actually the one running the show.
It's a masterful reversal of expected negotiation roles. True authority is masked by apparent deference.
It's a fascinating insight. It shows that the most powerful form of control in a negotiation might not be overt aggression or unwavering confidence, but the strategic decision to manipulate the opponent's sense of their own authority.
So let's synthesize these four dark mode techniques. We have false vulnerability, faked calm, manufactured disinterest, and this control play of faked worry. What is the unifying message here for the listener?
The unifying message is it's undeniably about narrative control. These aren't just isolated tricks. Control over your body language is control over the entire psychological narrative of the negotiation. You are actively shaping the environment, the perceived risk, and the internal calculus of the person sitting across from you.
Which forces us to internalize that the choice is always ours. It brings us back to that really powerful concluding thought from the source material.
Which one is that?
In any negotiation, your body always speaks. It's up to you to decide what message it sends. It implies that doing nothing is still a choice, and that conscious output is infinitely more strategic than some spontaneous tell.
The fact that silence is impossible means that if you are not deliberately engineering a nonverbal message, you are, by default, accidentally revealing a truthful one. And that realization transforms nonverbal communication from a simple reading exercise into a strategic planning imperative.
This deep dive has certainly revealed that advanced nonverbal strategy goes so far beyond simple cues like, maintaining eye contact or mirroring posture.
Oh, for sure.
These are conscious, powerful psychological tactics aimed at fundamentally influencing the perception of time, of vulnerability, and of value.
And this raises the final, I think, very important question for you, the learner, to mull over.
Right.
If we know now definitively that body language can be consciously used to mislead, to fake nervousness, to feign indifference, to manufacture worry, how can you ever be fully certain of the genuine emotional state or the true position of the person sitting across from you?
Yeah, that fundamentally challenges the basic assumption that nonverbal cues are a reliable window to the soul.
It does.
Recognizing that deliberate deception is not only possible, but an advanced strategy means we have to approach every nonverbal signal, whether we're sending it or receiving it, with a new, highly critical kind of engagement.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the strategic deployment of the dark side of body language. We encourage you to explore this tension between genuine influence and intentional manipulation even further.